Title: When Vows Crossed Paths. John Bosco met Nnen at a time when love felt simple and endless. They were both young, hopeful, and deeply rooted in the small-town rhythms of Sunday Mass, evening works, and whispered dreams beneath mango trees. John Bosco was known for his calm nature and thoughtful silence. Nnen, for her laughter that rang like church bells and a courage that sometimes frightened him, in a good way. They were each other's first real love. John Bosco had always spoken about priesthood as a distant calling, something he admired from afar. Nnen listened when he talked about God, service, and sacrifice, but she never imagined that those ideas would one day stand between them. To her, love was also sacred. She believed that God smiled when two people truly loved each other. For a while, life agreed with her. They planned a future in fragments: marriage, one day, children with strong names, a modest house close to the church. But life has a way of interrupting even the purest intentions. John Bosco's calling grew louder, more demanding. After months of inner struggle, prayer, and counsel, he told Nnen he wanted to enter the seminary. The night he told her, she cried quietly, not to change his mind, but because she already sensed what it would cost them. "I will always love you," he said, holding her trembling hands. "I know," she replied. "That's what makes this harder." They parted with promises that time would test and eventually break. While John Bosco immersed himself in theology, discipline, and spiritual formation, Nnen returned home to a different battle. Her parents, worried about her future and unmoved by romantic ideals, insisted she marry Johnson, a wealthy businessman old enough to know better than to promise love. To them, stability mattered more than affection. Nnen resisted. She cried. She reminded them of John Bosco. But love, in their eyes, could not compete with comfort. The wedding was lavish. Nnen wore gold and lace, but her heart was dressed in mourning. She became a wife, then a social figure, admired and envied, yet deeply alone. Johnson provided everything money could buy: cars, trips, jewelry, but never noticed how quiet she had become. At night, when the house slept, Nnen remembered a boy who once prayed with her under the stars. Years passed. John Bosco was ordained a Catholic priest. On the day he lay prostrate before the altar, he felt peace, but also a strange ache he could not name. He threw himself into pastoral work, becoming known for his compassion, especially toward the brokenhearted. Parishioners often wondered how he understood pain so well. He wondered too. Then one afternoon, after a parish retreat in a neighboring town, their worlds collided again. Nnen stood at the back of the church, older, refined, but unmistakably herself. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time collapsed. The priest and the wealthy man's wife stared at each other like two souls who had never finished a conversation. After Mass, she waited. "Father John Bosco," she said softly. He turned, and the title felt suddenly heavy. Nnen. They talked briefly that day, carefully, politely, but something had already been awakened. Over the weeks that followed, their meetings became longer, deeper. At first, they spoke of the past, then the present. Eventually, they dared to speak of the future. Old love, they discovered, does not die. It only waits. Hope reignited where vows once stood. Nnen confessed her unhappiness, her emotional loneliness, her longing for the life she never lived. John Bosco confessed his restlessness, the silent questions he carried into prayer, the feeling that his heart was divided. Love returned, not gently, but fiercely. What followed was a series of decisions that would change everything. Nnen left her husband, scandal shaking the circles she once moved in. John Bosco requested laicization, leaving the priesthood amid whispers, disappointment, and deep personal grief. They told themselves that love had won, that destiny had finally corrected its mistake. They married quietly. The first 3 years were beautiful. They traveled, laughed, and built a home filled with warmth and shared history. Friends called their story a miracle of love. They prayed together, planned children, and spoke often about how suffering had refined them. But slowly, cracks appeared. John Bosco struggled with identity. The silence he once embraced in prayer now haunted him. He missed the altar, the confessional, the sense of absolute purpose. Marriage, with all its demands and compromises, felt different from the ideal he had imagined. Nnen, on the other hand, wanted assurance. She had sacrificed everything: status, security, reputation, for him. She needed him fully present, fully committed. They began to argue about money, about faith, about regrets neither wanted to admit. One night, after a particularly heavy silence, John Bosco spoke the words that had been forming in his heart. "I think God is calling me back." Nnen stared at him, stunned, not by anger, but by fear. "Back to the priesthood?" He nodded, eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to explain it. But I am restless. I feel incomplete." Her voice broke. "What about us?" He had no answer. Love had brought them together, but purpose now pulled them apart. Their story was no longer about romance alone. It was about choice, sacrifice, and the painful truth that love, no matter how deep, cannot always silence a calling. As John Bosco stood at the crossroads once more, both of them understood something profound. Some love stories are not meant to end happily, but honestly. And sometimes, the hardest vows to keep are the ones made to the heart.